Alright, so I did multiple takes on this video, and honestly, like, I just want to really go to bed. I'm tired. It's been like a long process of this. I'm sure you already seen the title. I'm just gonna be straight up, off the cuff, mistakes and everything expected, no editing, or at least editing in certain spots. I'm not gonna drone on too long in the intro alone. I just want to talk about the fanaticism behind fixed camera. Each and every single time on the timeline, I see someone begging. I see them begging for fixed camera to return each and every single time. It's their objective to make Capcom Senpai notice them each and every singular point. Like, they get down on their knees and they beg constantly, bring me back fixed camera, bring me back into the 90s. They don't realize that if they really want to play those old school Resident Evil games, then the best they can do at least is get a PS3, get PSN, get on there and get the RE games off digital and play them. If the physical cards are way too expensive, I don't believe they are super expensive. They might be up there, but still, get a PS3, play those games for cheap. They are out there. Or better yet, emulate them on PC if you really want to play more old school Resident Evil. The classics are still here. Yet I don't understand constantly saying that yes, we need to return fully to the classic style. It's not like something cannot go out of date. It's not like something can't be archaic, especially if it came out in the 90s and we have like these playstyles that's been fully fleshed out. Resident Evil with fixed camera, it came out during a time when the companies were experimenting and migrating from 2D to 3D. Everything was not perfect during this migration, so even then, like third-person games, they might have played like shit. Brawlers, there might be some shit brawlers on there, on the PS1 and 3D. Spawn the Eternal is one of them. They were experimenting with a lot of stuff, and fixed camera happened to be a hit. It happened to be a success that stood out amongst the curve, right? We have this here. We have this illustration, and Resident Evil became popular and well known because of it. But when you look into the deeper meaning, you will see Capcom saying things like, well, for RE2 Remake, we thought the best style after experimenting with third person, first person, and fixed camera, we thought the best was third person. You will see deep in the past, there are interviews that exist where the RE team clearly said that the same old style, the same old thing being regurgitated constantly over and over got boring to the development team, and they're the guys creating the game. They know what the fans want. I put it like this: if the hardcore fans just want old school RE, then tell me why the developers should stifle their creativity over something that they are readily bored with the old playstyle, and they want to move on and do something else. They should do something different. They should experiment more, make more great side games. We need that in Resident Evil. Why should they stifle creativity just because? If they can create something good, if it's a new label, if it's interesting, appealing, whatnot, etc., if it works, it works. If it doesn't, go back to the drawing board. And now, third person works. That is a style that people prefer, and people prefer to have more remakes come out. So I don't see what the big issue is with them going forward. If you want my personal opinion, I think that fixed camera is indeed archaic. I do think that fixed camera is indeed outdated, and I think if they had the option back then to sort of have that quality control and know that these playstyles were a bit more established in 3D, then they would have probably made Resident Evil a third-person shooter game. They wanted to make RE originally during like beta concepts of RE1. That wasn't even fixed camera. It was going to be in first person. It was going to detail having ghosts in the story as well, so that would have been interesting to say the least. But it turned out to be the Resident Evil we know today, and games go through various concepts before they get remade, rebuilt, and reintroduced to a new audience. To be fair, I don't think the identity crisis that Resident Evil had when it went from, survival horror to sort of third-person action game, then back to survival horror, but it was first person. That huge gap of like changing play styles all the time, I think that did really make the identity crisis worse, and they should have just stuck to survival horror as an element. That still should give them a room to experiment and make new camera angles and things going out of style. It happens all the time. I use this perfectly as an example. Look at things like Metal Gear Solid, right? Metal Gear Solid 1, it had this whole, I think even in the old Metal Gear games, they had this whole top-down view, and that was the camera angle. The camera angle was solely on top of Snake. Then we move to Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence. We have the superior camera angle, which is behind the back. You can see the entire environment. It works out well. No issues. Sure, you can switch back to the old camera angle, but we know that this new camera style is superior for the game, and it opens up a new level of possibility and interactivity. We have that. Moving to Metal Gear Solid 5 and Metal Gear Solid 4, that camera style of the old top-down view is now gone, replaced with the behind-the-back thing, and no one complained about it. GTA, we had the Grand Theft Auto games on the PlayStation 1, and they had the whole top-down perspective. When you get to Grand Theft Auto 3, you can toggle the camera angle back to the top down. Yet, once again, you'll realize that Grand Theft Auto 3 revolutionized the whole open world sandbox thing, the open world criminal aspects. And they had a completely different camera angle that was mostly third person. And going forward, the old style was eliminated. They didn't go back to them. I had some guy arguing with me about options. Not all options are good, and honestly, if they don't live up to quality standards, then they outlive their usefulness, and they are never really pursued or used in a video game if they turn out to be bad. Let's say, for instance, the option that they had in Resident Evil Code Veronica with the first person option in Battle Game. We tried that, we experimented with it, and it was clunky because it had the same sort of fixed camera angle controls, and it just wasn't done that well. Imagine a Resident Evil game going forward where fans probably would ask for something, and imagine one guy asking for, I want that first person mode to come back from Code Veronica Battle Game. I want that to come back. Where is that? Nobody asked for it because it was something that was an option, it was a feature, and it turned out to be really not that great when weighed in with other features. This is what will happen with fixed camera versus third person. Even if you had the option to toggle it on and off, it still would be something like, well, it's there, it's cool. And then some people are going to be like, I prefer to play in third person because I can see more, I can do more, etc. Let's not also pretend that fixed camera is perfect, and I'm going to tell you why. It's not perfect because I had a situation while playing Extreme Battle. While playing this game, I had 2 zombies in front of me and one like all the way behind me. The guy all the way behind me, I was trying to auto aim. I aimed towards him. He was not the priority target. I aimed towards the guy in the hallway. I'm like, Chris, what are you doing? What the fuck? And then the other zombies there bit me, the ones that were the closest, and I'm like, I want the auto aim to focus on the priority target. Why am I aiming at this guy that's like fucking 2 clicks behind me? It makes no fucking sense. It gets on my fucking nerves, and I love these games to death. They have issues. Not every game is perfect, even the third person games. I said it best. The RE2 remake, it cut out content, and I don't like that. I don't like that some things were removed and A and B scenarios weren't that great. I understand that complaint. Everything is not perfect, but that's not perfect. That is not a subjective sort of thought process. That is something that is legitimately wrong with auto aim and fixed camera. It just blows me that people will defend this in fixed camera tank control style games when crowd control can be an issue of trial and error with the auto aim. And honestly, you can ask anyone, ask any veteran out there in Resident Evil, ask them if they never had a situation before where they clearly aimed at a zombie, they clearly pointed in his direction, and what happened is he turned to the other zombie, which was a little bit far away, and guess what happened? You got bit in that process. I don't know why folks think that this cannot happen, and it's just my opinion, without doing some experimentation first. Put yourself in that situation and see what happens. You're going to probably aim at the wrong creature, you're going to be penalized for it. I do believe that maybe manual aim in the OG game to regulate and mitigate this issue would be better, but auto aim is not. You kind of need the auto aim to make the identification of threats a bit more fair on you as a player. I know you can cut it off, you can chalk things down to muscle memory and remember where enemies are. However, you still can't say it's not trial and error, because what Resident Evil likes to do is they like to use RNG, randomly generated enemies, and sometimes those enemies, especially in Resident Evil 3, can fuck you over. Imagine a bunch of zombies not appearing where you think they should appear. Instead, you get 3 hunters. It's fantastic, isn't it? Sometimes you need the crush to help you get through, to dull the pain, to make this easier, along with player skill aiding you through. Let's go back to that original debate of folks saying that yes, Capcom has all the money in the world and they can make whatever they want, however they want, whenever they want, and it would have been the greatest idea for them to implement those ideas in the Resident Evil 2 remake beta, where they decided to play around with first person, fixed camera, and third person, and everyone will be pleased. Remember, if you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one, especially yourself. The reason for this logic, the reason I'm saying this, is due to the fact that I think people don't know how development works. If they decided to do this, the development time would increase, and that means that you would be putting Resident Evil 2 and 3 on next generation platforms with a lesser install base. You see what I'm saying? It would be less people on next generation consoles in comparison to the current gen of PS4, Xbox One, and the multi-platform machine that is the PC. I'm not counting Switch because I don't think that they could put that game on Switch. Anyway, the development cycle would increase. This would mean more time, more research, more development, more playtesting would be in order, and that means more money would be spent. I guess folks think that Capcom has a endless paper trail when they had money problems before as a company, but I digress. It's not like companies can't go bankrupt. I digress there, fam. But still, moving on. I think that this would create a disaster amongst the community. More people would be impatient. Humans are an impatient species. So knowing that Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 would take more time to develop for 3 camera angles on a new next generation console that you have to buy and also pay $60 for the game, as well as like $500, $600, or $400 for the console, that's ridiculous. The popularity would not be as hot as those that are on the PS4 right now that has accessibility to the game and they can play it right now, as opposed to waiting for the next generation consoles after holiday 2020. I think you need a better business mindset. In development, you can decide if ideas are slowing down the development cycle for the worse, and if those ideas end up slowing it down, you have to trim the fat as a result. I don't get why people don't understand this. If you want fixed camera to make a giant splash, then what you need to do is you need to go out and you need to give billions, millions, all your time, effort, and dedication and money to these indie games that keep getting overshadowed constantly, time in and time out again. It has to make more money than the current population of IPs now, and honestly, that's just not going to happen because new IPs, once again, they don't have that staying power, as sequels, and they don't have that staying power as existing franchises. So you need to support things like, the visual game. You need to go out there and you need to support all these indie sort of fixed camera games in order to make them super relevant. Your money matters, your money speaks. Stop buying new Resident Evil games, stop supporting them. We know you're going to keep supporting them anyway. You're going to keep giving Capcom money anyway, regardless, despite this whole situation, because you're a Resident Evil fan. You cannot stay away. If you don't like third person, then don't give them your money, but you're going to give them your money anyway because curiosity, brand loyalty, and a bunch of differing factors. Yes, that is important. Differing factors here, because your fanaticism cannot be let go. No matter what criticism you say about the RE series, you will not boycott it. You will not stay away. You will keep giving money to the company despite your hatred of a particular playstyle, instead of not supporting it entirely because you're a good little girl. And boy, I just have to lay the truth on you here, because every single time I see people complain about this, they never vote with their wallet. It always happens. Why are these sort of like survival horror games, why are they getting overshadowed in the indie scene, and they're not getting seen as much, and you're not supporting the Kickstarters and everything? At a certain point, it cogs in my mind like a gear, saying that it might be just the fault of the hardcore Resident Evil purist fans not giving their money where it's due, over just making this blanket statement and wanting Capcom to do it, when they said before they're not doing it because they feel that third person is the best. Moving on, it's a bunch of other stuff as well that I should mention really quickly before I sign out. So the Rogue guys, Residents of Evil, no harm to them. I think they're great people. They sound like great people. They sound like really enthusiastic guys. But I think that JJ is living on a cloud. I think he's wishing on a star with Vigil. One of his tweets said, "I hope that Vigil makes a big comeback for classic survival horror games." I assume that means fixed camera, and I assume he wants a resurgence of these games because of Vigil. That's their survival horror game. That's an indie game coming out, right? And it's based around the Road team and everything. JJ, with all due respect, I think your bubble is going to be imploded upon immediately with the biggest space needle from Earth. And I'm going to tell you why. I respect you, dude. I'm going to tell you why. I think you are wishing on a star so much because there's this thing that is going on right now with the most popularized games going on. You see The Last of Us Part 2, you see Resident Evil 2 Remake being in third person, right? And they are super popular. Last of Us has staying power as a brand name. In order for a resurgence of classic survival horror games in the mainstream, and I know that's what you guys want, you want this to happen in the mainstream. In order for this to happen, there has to be some sort of decrease in popularity. It has to be mainstream third-person horror games are dying and they're not coming out anymore, and now people want fixed camera angles. That means that games like Last of Us and games like Resident Evil on their current route, they have to go back to the drawing board. If these games continue to be a huge success with the new camera angles that they have, then this will not happen. Mark my words. RE4 revolutionized the gaming industry in terms of the third person shooter, in terms of over the shoulder. That is a rare occurrence. That is lightning in a bottle. Same for fixed camera being popular back in the day. That was lightning in a bottle. You think that could happen twice after Resident Evil had so many shifts and perspectives, and then on top of that, we have games that play better, we have games that focus on high tier graphics, we have games that focus on high tier sound design. You really think that making a game equivalent to a 1998 product is going to fly in 2020? I'm just saying, you think that's possible? You think that's going to happen without it being regulated to indie status, without people complaining about it, saying that it controls bad? Already, just read some reviews of Resident Evil 1 Remake on the HD remasters. There were already people complaining about the controls, and they fixed them. They tried their best to fix them with the modernized alternate controls. Folks still found nitpicks with it. by getting attacked off screen, by having that issue where you don't aim at the priority target and auto aim, etc. I just don't think there's going to be a decrease in popularity for popular third-person games, and I also think that this revolutionized boom of having a resurgence is a rare and a blue moon treat, and I don't think it's going to happen in an era where we expect games to look and play and perform better. It's just not happening at all. I wish you the best of luck on Vigil. I think survival horror games with fixed camera are going to be regulated to indie status for a long time now, and until mainstream devs find some sort of profit from that, until they find some sort of money value to like doing these games like this style, until they find some reason to do it because of the money that it would make or something like that, it's not going to happen. Like, already we see the third person games outselling a lot of the fixed camera titles. It's just a fact. Developers, they're not your friend. They want the money. And if they still make great games, you know, they can dive in the money all they want. That dividend, that bottom line, that's all they care about. They don't care about your aspirations to bringing something back if it doesn't bring them money or popularity or fame, and it doesn't make them a wider success in the realm of the media out there at large. You know, if it doesn't placate those people, then what is the point? They're not going to go back to something that will appease a hardcore minority, and that's it. Like, you know, this is just mostly for like the hardcore RE fans that really enjoyed the fixed camera games and they want to go back to them. Now let's continue on here. Let's see, is there anything else worth mentioning? I think I mentioned like most of the things here. Just, you know, and there's also folks saying, oh, it's, you know, fixed camera is super artistic and it's super artsy fartsy. Couldn't we just make a generalized statement that most super fantastic games, those genre defining games, couldn't we make the same argument that they should mostly be considered as art forms when it was a period in time where people didn't consider video games as art? Shouldn't we just be happy in general? Just shrugging here. I'm just saying, you know, shouldn't we be just happy about that as opposed to going to this one play style and really just loving it so much to the point where we don't realize that we're happy in general for video games even being recognized as art? What makes Resident Evil 2 Remake less of an artistic game from a survival horror standpoint and a standpoint of a quality remake? Because there's not a lot of really good remakes out there, so you got to take what you can get. I don't understand, you know, the graphics look nice and it looks better than the original. What makes it not art outside of the camera angle? I'm still trying to process, like, you guys want door loaders back in a seamless game where you can go through a door no problem and everything else is loaded? Like, you guys want these archaic mechanics to come back? What makes them so good and special? I don't understand. Outside of nostalgia, just it's a nostalgia trip. The only logical reasoning is nostalgia. Something for the past, something that's ancient, something that's old, something that you liked previously and you're not seeing it anymore, and you hound Capcom over it day in and day out. And honestly, there's also like talks of people wanting a director's cut for RE2 that puts in like fixed camera angles. I don't think it's gonna happen. I gotta burst your bubble again. Realistically, I think they're done. It's over. If they said that the best style is third person, they didn't put like the third person camera angle to a lesser extent. They said the best of the best, top of the line for them, in their opinion, is without a doubt OTS. And honestly, all those claims of people saying that OTS, it can't have like horror elements to them, I think you're fooling yourself as soon as Remake 2 came out and as soon as Dead Space 1 came out and they prove you guys wrong. Despite how much praise Dead Space 1 and Remake 2 gets, you guys still had those preconceived notions that every singular game that came out that was OTS was similar to RE4 and it was going to be action oriented when you have these survival mechanics, when you have these mechanics scaled back, when you have these interesting mechanics with Dead Space 1 with the stasis, and you have all this interesting stuff with the monsters and the atmosphere, and you have Remake 2, which is, with all intents and purposes, a survival horror game. You kind of did have preconceived notions that every game coming out like this is uninspired and it's going to be like RE4 all the time, and you're going to be pressing QTEs, kicking enemies and whatnot. That kind of got dashed and debunked, and you can't really run up to an enemy in Remake 2 and do a roundhouse kick without a zombie piling on top of you and taking you to the ground like an MMA fighter. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when you gotta eat crow? Because you have to eat crow for saying that all sort of like OTS games are going to be action oriented, because RE4 really revolutionized over the shoulder, and you can't say that transitioned over into Remake 2 because Remake 2 cannot be seen as a full-blown action-y experience. I'm just saying, you know, it's okay to have your preferences. It's okay to sort of, you know, say, yeah, it's cool. We're seeing this stuff in mods, you know, but I don't think it's okay to expect something and want something that you know isn't returning ever again. And you should have more of a rational mindset to criticize fixed camera, because in this video alone I made some good points saying that it's not 100% perfect, and honestly there are problems with fixed camera just as much as you claim there are problems with third person. Yeah, it seems to be not perfect either. I just want to know, like, why do you expect this to come back? Why do you think that this style has been belittled when the classics still hold so much value to you and Capcom that they made Resident Evil a meta series because of it? Honestly, it had to do something for them to continue the franchise in that manner. Going forward, however, things change, and I think people really despise change, even when change is for the better, like making Resident Evil so much more accessible and easier to pick up and play and easier to toggle buttons like the run button. You don't have to hold buttons, you don't have to figure out that yes, this is a certain direction that I have to move with the tank control style, yes, this is where I have to go downward here, this is up here. It's like much more mainstream and streamlined that way, and it's still good and it's still tactical to some extent. I don't understand why this change would be seen or pegged as being worse. From a technological standpoint, this is a stunning achievement for the franchise. This was possibly the best way to go to blend the aesthetic of the old survival horror games, that whole tense dread and feel, and having less ammo possible. That was the best blend of blending this whole, and I said blend a lot, but whatever the fuck, just taking this whole aesthetic, putting it in the blender and saying we have survival horror here, but we're also going to use OTS, and that's the best compromise. We have great controls, we have a great shooting system, we have a great basis. Let's put it all together and see what we can make. I just don't get how the really just purists, it's just mostly purists, I don't get how they think, honestly, and I wish you guys would just think better and think outside the box and understand that, you know, there's nothing wrong with wanting options, but not all options are warranted and not all options are good, and sometimes if those options are indeed terrible, if they do make a fixed camera centric game that's not that great, then to put multiple styles in one game like Remake 3, to ask for something like that just would be a waste of time and money if the game wasn't developed around all three styles, and honestly that would take way too long to finish. So I think that would be the bad solution, that would be the bad choice. I guess the example that we learned today is that people, mainly RE purists and fixed camera purists, tank control purists, whatever, I think you should put your money where your mouth is. Really. If you don't like third person RE, then it should fail by your logic, right? It should fail. This new trend of survival horror remakes that you don't like, it should fail if you all gather together as a collective and stop buying these games due to fascination and interest as fans of the series that feel inclined that they need to play them. They don't get it on PC, they don't pirate, they have options, they have alternatives, they can stop supporting Capcom, they can stop talking about Capcom anytime they choose not to do it. Maybe you also need to put your money where your mouth is, and hopefully Vigil gets like $80 trillion. Hopefully it's a massive success and that will cause people to imitate it. You know, life imitates art, and if people see more art from this supposed fixed camera playstyle, then there should be no problem with these projects taking off the ground and getting their support if they have this giant backing of people constantly making arguments about it. However, I think that realistically, if mainstream developers feel like they have another creative vision in mind, if they want to do third person horror, if they want to do first person horror, and if they know that these two styles are what's in the know, what's in the popularity pool, then they should not be forced to regress backwards if they don't want to, just as people really shouldn't feel like their creativity shouldn't be stifled if they want to be a game developer and their goal is to make a fixed camera game. Have at it, do what you need to do in the indie scene. I just hope that people will support you after they've complained about Resident Evil not having this playstyle like 5 billion times, and I hope they give you the money that you solemnly deserve, because they should be doing it, they should be interested, they should be motivated, they should be showing you the same energy. Instead, they won't show you the same energy, because I know how these people operate. They aren't pleased until it's in Resident Evil, and it won't be in Resident Evil, in my opinion, going forward, unless something monumental happens where fixed camera comes into the equation yet again, and there's another lightning in the bottle situation for a resurgence, and I doubt it. It's such a rarity. After Resident Evil changed the landscape with Resident Evil 4 being OTS, and after Remake 2 showed that horror can be in this sort of playstyle and succeed, there is no need to go back on it. There is no need to go back and revisit fixed camera. The best of the best exist, and Capcom made up their minds, and I think people will just have to get used to it, accept their opinion, or disagree with it till the end of time, as fixed camera is not implemented in other Capcom games going forward unless they are remastering another Resident Evil game from the past. And I think going forward they will just remake these games even more with third person in mind, because I'm a realist and realistic people understand things a lot better. I'd also like to make just a little subtle side point here. I find it hilarious that now we had these games that broke the mold, that broke conventions, that broke their initial sort of gatherings when they first started off as like initial projects, like Sengoku, Biohazard turning into Onimusha, and now Onimusha, when I played the first one and it had fixed camera, I was like, that's weird for like a fixed camera action game, but that's how they started in like 2001. Now we have the dynamic camera for Onimusha, and that worked really well for Onimusha 3, and they enhanced the gameplay and they made the gameplay their own, and it wasn't just a Resident Evil clone anymore. They decided to break tradition and do something different. Was that fan base making a giant stink after Onimusha 3 came out, and were they literally begging Capcom to death that they made an error, that they made a mistake, and now they want fixed camera back into Onimusha games? No, nobody even cared. Nobody even bought it up because they felt like the gameplay was good in Onimusha 3. The only criticism that you hear is that Onimusha 2 was a deeper game in some regards. That's it. It's only the Resident Evil people. I'm telling you, it's only the Resident Evil fan base bringing up this as a point of contention all the time, bringing this up as sort of a way to justify it. It's only you guys, only you. That's it. Nobody else is asking for it outside of the RE guys and the hack and slash guys. They pretty much accepted the fact that we have new dynamic camera angles that is completely fine for these games of these magnitudes. I gotta be 100% real, it feels like these guys that bring this up constantly for survival horror, it feels like they are the last of an ancient breed. It really does. Anyway, this is Renegade Operative signing off. Hopefully this rant about fixed camera, hopefully this is the last time I have to talk about this too. I'm fucking tired of talking about this, really. Like, it's if you don't get it by now, I just have to think that you are in delusion some way, some form, or you're not like susceptible to reason, or you have a narrow mind and you're not open to thinking outside of the box in terms of how a franchise progresses. Fixed camera is definitely outdated in my opinion. Still, those fixed camera RA games weren't bad. Let's see how the series progresses going forward with first person or third person, and if they continue to make quality titles, I will continue to play them, because I am a person that wants more quality out of my franchise going forward, and I am not the person that wants an entire franchise to die just because Resident Evil 4 came out. That's a bit ridiculous now. Come on people, that's ridiculous. See you guys next time. Later.